Okay, so it's time to switch gears and dive into this week's Real Talk Market Snapshot. What's happened in the Northern Virginia real estate market in the last 7 days, and in under 5 minutes, possibly as much as 10 minutes, because we're going to dive into what the contracts have looked like as well. It's going to be quite surprising this week because we are coming off of the 4th of July weekend. This is our first weekend back. And there was some interesting activity that happened. So let's dive into this and show you exactly what's going on and exactly what you need to expect this weekend going out into the market. So you can see, as always, that our black line here is our buyer activity. This was the 4th of July weekend. You can see there was a huge dip in buyer activity, and you can see we had a simultaneously huge dip in inventory or supply. So supply dipped and demand dipped. That was July 4th weekend, which was last weekend. So now we're back into the market after July 4th, and look at this influx of inventory. Inventory just spiked really, really high. In fact, this is where inventory is this year at this time. This is where it was last year, so it's even higher than it was last year. But buyer activity did not match that. Buyer activity went up, but it didn't match it. So buyer activity is actually a little bit lower. Here's where it was last year, here's where it is this year. It's a minutia, just a little bit lower. So what this tells me is that this last 10 days with school getting out, with 4th of July weekend, it's almost like the summer lull hit a little bit early. And so buyers, this could be a great window for you. Sellers are still getting top market value. There's a townhouse in Reston, Virginia that we just put an offer in for a client of ours. That one's going above asking price. But realistically, it's only going above asking price by a number that I expected it to go higher, and it was listed to bring in multiple offers, and only brought in 3 offers. So it's still a seller's market. Sellers are still getting top dollar, but it's not as much of a seller's market to where buyers are having to be chaotic and having to just throw money at properties. They have a lot of choices, especially right now. You can see all this inventory here that buyers actually have quite a few choices. So this graph alone tells us that buyers, it's a pretty fair market. You just need to be strategic with what you're looking at. And sellers, it's really, really important that you put your best foot forward when you're putting your property on the market, especially if you're trying to get top market value. If you're just trying to get rid of the property and get rid of it quickly, it's absolutely fine. Just price it appropriately, because properties are staying on the market a little bit longer, and buyers are having choices. So it's not just that you can just put it on the market and dive in. Now, because of this influx of inventory right here and this delta between inventory and demand, we actually have more inventory than demand, which is very rare for our market lately. So you can see when we come down here to the buyer's market versus seller's market, again, this gray line here is a neutral market. Anything above is a seller's market, anything below is a buyer's market. You can see that we dip pretty significantly into a buyer's market. Now, does that mean the market's crashing? Absolutely not, because if you look at this mark here and you look last year, it did the exact same thing. So we're going to go back up into that seller's market, but how strongly we go up into it is what we need to watch and see. So that's the important thing here, is that there's a window of opportunity for buyers. It may last into this week, so going into this weekend's market, you may have a little bit of an opportunity there. It may not. I don't know what to tell you there. We only know in hindsight, but this is the closest that you can get to real-time information. So have your realtor be in contact with the seller's agent, find out exactly what's going on with offers, and then on the seller side, be in contact with your realtor and watch what's happening as far as offers coming in and so on. So what have contracts actually looked like? Well, you can see that, again, we're looking at Northern Virginia here. So you can see that 35% of the contracts went under contract above the asking price, 29% went at asking price, and 36% went below. So that means that 64% of the properties went at or above asking price. See that 43% of the properties went under contract in 7 days or less, and 22% in 21 days or less. So 65% of the properties went under contract in the first 21 days, and 64% of them went at or above asking price. So those numbers are pretty consistent. We're seeing that, and that 21-day mark is really the mark where we might start seeing price drops needing to occur. Contingencies has been pretty consistent, right around that 60-40 mark, 63% got their finance contingency, 61% got their appraisal contingency here in Northern Virginia, and 66% got their inspection contingency. This is beautiful for buyers because that lets buyers have their protection on the properties. Of this 34% over here, I can almost guarantee you that a majority of those buyers did pre-offer inspection. So buyers are really being protected through these contracts, which is really nice. 80%, 80/20 on cash versus financed, with 80 being financed, 20 being cash. Again, cash buyers, if you are a cash buyer, does not mean you automatically get a discount on the property. Financing spends just as well as cash does, but what it does give you offers the opportunity for is quicker closing, fewer contingencies, and so on, because you don't have a lender in the background requiring these things. Seller subsidies, 26% of the contracts had seller subsidies. That's the highest we've seen in I think this whole year. Seller subsidy means that the seller gave something back to the buyer, some kind of credit or something. And then we can see that we have about 94% of the contracts had buyer agent compensation included. So the seller was contributing to buyer agent compensation. So this is a little bit lower than what we've been seeing. We're typically seeing between 97 and 99%. The last 2 weeks we had 95 and this week 94. But still 80% of that compensation is at 2.5% or above. So this still means that sellers, you need to be prepared to contribute to buyer agent compensation. You do not have to, it's fully negotiable. But in a competitive market where buyers have choices, if you're not willing to help them with that, that may push them over to another property where the seller's willing to do that. So that's just something to keep in mind. So all in all, it is a seller's market. I know it dipped down to the buyer's market this week. It's a seller's market overall still, but there's a window of opportunity, and this is we're seeing this. We just had a mastermind meeting. We're seeing this across the board, that it feels like the summer market has kind of kicked in a little bit, and that we're in that little bit of a summer lull. So buyers, if you are considering buying in the next 2 to 6 months, you might want to dive into it and do it now versus waiting, because there could be a little bit of an opportunity. Sellers, it's still a great time to sell because you're still getting top market value, but you've got to put your best foot forward. It's not just throw it on the market and see what sticks. Okay, I hope this makes sense to everybody. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My number is 703-783-2143. Kelly and I are here to help you, whether on the buy side or the sell side, help you navigate the market. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week.